My name is Harold Jennings. I'm 68 years old, and the morning I woke up in a place I'd never seen before. I knew instantly that something in my life had been switched without my permission. Before I tell you what happened, let me ask you something. What would you do if you opened your eyes in a room you didn't recognize? And your own son was the reason you were there. If you like real stories with family twists, betrayal, and slow-burning suspense, don't forget to subscribe, because what happened to me wasn't an accident. It was a plan. I woke to the soft hum of fluorescent lights. The ceiling above me was a pale, institutional beige, the kind that tries to look calming but ends up feeling cold. A faint smell of disinfectant lingered in the air. There was a curtain pulled halfway across the room, and an unfamiliar set of drawers beside my bed. This wasn't my home. This wasn't any hospital I'd ever been to. This was somewhere else. My mouth was dry as sandpaper. "Hello," I croaked. A woman in scrubs walked past and paused. She backtracked and stepped into my room with a practiced smile. "Good morning, Mr. Jennings. You're awake?" Where am I?" I asked, trying to sit up. "You're at Oak Ridge Residential Care," she said gently. "You've been here 3 days. 3 days. I think you're mistaken," I said slowly. "I'm fine. I live alone. I do my own errands. I don't need residential care." She tapped something on her tablet. "Your son, Kyle, signed the admission paperwork. He said you might deny needing help at first." My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Kyle, the son I raised alone after his mother died. The son I helped through school, through 2 job changes, through a messy breakup. The son I trusted more than anyone. He said. I was confused. I asked. She nodded. "He said you were having episodes." Episodes. I repeated the word like it was acidic. "I need to speak to him." "Of course, I'll bring you a phone." The phone she brought me was a cheap flip phone, not my smartphone. My son had my real phone. That alone made my stomach sink. Kyle answered on the second ring. "Dad, you're awake," he said, sounding like someone delivering news to a coworker, not his father. "Kyle," I said firmly, "why am I in a nursing home?" A long silence followed. "Dad, we talked about this." "No," I said, "we didn't." "Why am I here?" "You had another dizzy spell," he said. "You don't remember. You fell outside. You were confused. The doctor said you needed supervision." I frowned. "Kyle, nothing like that happened. I remember everything just fine." "Dad," he said, impatient now, "this is exactly what I'm talking about. You keep insisting everything's fine." "I want to go home," I said. "You can't," he replied, voice tightening. "It's for your own good. I'm late for a meeting, so we'll talk later." He hung up. Just like that. I stared at the flip phone, my pulse steady but my mind racing. None of what he said matched anything I remembered. I wasn't confused. I wasn't disoriented. I had retired from 35 years as a mechanical engineer with a clear mind and a clear routine. I mowed my lawn every Saturday. I did crossword puzzles every Sunday. I cooked, cleaned, drove, lived. There was no confusion. Something was wrong. The nurse returned later with my personal items. They were in a plastic bag. My watch, my wallet, my glasses. But no house keys, no smartphone, no notebook, no medication list. "Kyle took the rest home," she said cheerfully. "He said you kept misplacing things." Misplacing things. I gripped the sides of the bed. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't aging. Someone else was making decisions for me. For the next 2 days, I played along. I took the pills. They gave me laxatives, vitamins, mild sedatives, nothing unsafe, but enough to dull emotions. I attended the group activities. I listened more than I spoke. Most residents were decades older than me. Some had advanced dementia. Some didn't speak at all. Some stared quietly into space. I didn't belong here. I wasn't supposed to be here. And on the 3rd day, proof of that arrived. I was in the lounge, eating tasteless scrambled eggs, when I heard a familiar voice call my name. "Harold," I turned. It was Tom Keller, my next-door neighbor for 18 years, a retired firefighter, built like he could still lift a truck if he needed to. Tom's face was red with anger. "What's going on?" "I went to your house yesterday and a moving truck was clearing everything out." My fork dropped. "A moving truck? They emptied your house," he said. "Everything. Furniture, boxes, tools, the works." I asked Kyle what was happening. "He told me you'd had a stroke and were coming to live with him." My jaw tightened. "I never had a stroke." Tom's eyes narrowed. "I didn't think so. Something's off. Harold, way off. The house I built with my own 2 hands after my wife died. The house filled with decades of memories and sweat and pride." I felt my chest ache. "Tom," I said quietly, "I need your help, and I need you not to tell Kyle you were here." Without hesitation, he nodded. "What do you need?" "A laptop," I said. "Tonight," and that night, Tom slipped back in and handed me his tablet. I went to the county property website and typed in my address. The air left my lungs. Owner, Kyle Jennings. Transfer date, 11 days ago. Sale price, $0. Family transfer. Recorded signature, Harold A. Jennings. But I never signed anything. Never agreed to anything. never consented to anything. Tom clenched his jaw. Harold, someone forged your name. I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing my life one document at a time. And part 2 is where I start figuring out just how deep this goes. Tom sat beside me while I stared at the screen, my name typed neatly under seller as if I had personally handed my entire life to someone else, but I hadn't signed anything. Not a document, not a transfer form, not a single sheet of paper. Harold, Tom said quietly, his voice pulling me from the digital nightmare. This isn't confusion. This is something else. My throat felt tight, and the words came out thin, fragile. Kyle wouldn't do this to me. Even as I said it, the conviction wavered. Tom didn't argue. He didn't have to. His expression, etched with years of seeing the worst in people during emergencies, said it all. He had seen fires, family feuds, medical crises. He knew when a situation was dangerously wrong. First thing tomorrow, he announced, his tone firm and protective. I'll bring the printed record. You'll need evidence. But morning didn't go as we planned. The new day didn't bring the evidence I needed. It brought the opposition. Right after I'd finished my breakfast, a soft knock came at my door. A staff member, a young woman I didn't recognize, peeked her head in. Mr. Jennings, the social worker will see you now. My stomach flipped over. I hadn't requested a social worker. I hadn't even started the process, but someone had. I walked into the small office, my heart pounding, a nervous rhythm against my ribs. The social worker, Ms. Harper, greeted me with a polite, professional smile as I sat across from her polished desk. Her office was neat, organized, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside me. Mr. Jennings, she began, her voice calm and measured. Your son expressed some concerns. He indicated that you may be resisting care. He mentioned you're struggling to accept your condition. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. What condition? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Ms. Harper didn't flinch. She simply opened the file on her desk, the file with my name on it, and turned it so I could see. My eyes widened, scanning the page until they landed on a section labeled Reason for Admission. The words blurred together, a cruel fiction someone had crafted to steal my life. Confusion episodes, memory lapses, increasing disorientation, possible early cognitive decline. None of it was true, not a single word. It was a character assassination, written in cold, clinical language. A wave of anger washed over me, so hot it nearly choked me. Ms. Harper, I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. I have never had a memory lapse in my life. I know what day it is. It's Tuesday. I know where I live, 45 Oak Street. I know who the president is, who my neighbors are, and what was on my last grocery list: milk bread, coffee, and a can of tuna for the cat next door. Someone has lied. She studied me, her gaze analytical, searching. For a long moment, the only sound was the quiet hum of the building. If what you're saying is true, she said finally, her expression unreadable. You have the right to request an independent evaluation. Hope, sharp and sudden, pierced through the fog of my despair. Then I'm requesting it, I said immediately, without a second's hesitation. I'll file the request, she replied, making a note in the file. But be aware, Mr. Jennings, these evaluations can take time. Families can appeal. It isn't a simple process. No, I thought. Nothing about this was simple. But her calm, procedural response was the first real glimmer of possibility I'd had. It was a lifeline. That afternoon, Tom returned, but he wasn't alone. With him was a younger man in a crisp gray jacket, his expression serious but kind. Tom introduced him as his grandson, Eli, a patient advocate at the county hospital. Eli shook my hand, his grip firm and confident. I heard what's happening. Mr. Jennings, he said, looking me straight in the eye. I've seen cases like this before. We're going to sort this out the right way. He didn't waste any time. He sat down and clearly explained the battlefield I was now on. He laid out the strategy, the steps I needed to take to reclaim my autonomy, my very identity. First, an independent capacity assessment, a medical opinion from someone who wasn't connected to my son. Second, a thorough review of all the admission paperwork to find any inconsistencies or procedural errors. Third, a legal advocate, a lawyer who specialized in elder rights. And finally, documentation. Letters, statements, anything from friends and neighbors showing I was functioning normally right before I was admitted. Your neighbor, Tom, called me because he trusts you, Eli said, his words a balm on my frayed nerves. His trust in your judgment is a powerful piece of evidence in cases like this. My eyes burned, a mixture of embarrassment at my situation and overwhelming relief that I wasn't alone in this fight. Then Eli paused, his expression turning grave. There's one more thing you should know. He took a breath. Your son attempted to request a power of attorney document from our office yesterday. The air in the room went still. My entire body went cold, a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. He what? I whispered, the words barely audible. He didn't get it. Eli reassured me quickly. Our legal department refused, without your presence and consent. But it tells us something important. It means he's trying to take control of more than just your house. He's aiming for everything. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, a frantic drumbeat of betrayal. Suddenly, everything clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Kyle wasn't overwhelmed. He wasn't confused about my health. He wasn't panicking to get me care. He was planning. Every move, every lie, every feigned concern was a calculated step in a cold, deliberate scheme, and I had walked right into his trap. The next morning began quietly. It was a silence that felt heavy, unnatural. The usual sounds of a nursing home, the distant chatter of nurses, the faint buzz of a TV from the community lounge, the soft, shuffling rhythm of walkers in the hallway were all absent. There was just stillness. It was the kind of deep, unsettling quiet that hangs in the air right before a storm breaks, the kind that told me something was brewing just beneath the surface. I sat on the edge of my bed, every nerve on high alert, listening to the silence and waiting for whatever was coming next. It was a feeling I knew all too well from my years on the police force. The calm before the chaos. Around 9 in the morning, the quiet was finally broken. A staff member, a young woman with a professionally neutral expression, appeared in my doorway. Her voice was level, almost robotic. "Mr. Jennings, you have a visitor." My heart, which had been beating a slow, steady rhythm, suddenly tightened in my chest. A visitor. No one knew I was here except two. I asked, my voice coming out raspy and tight. I braced myself. She stepped aside without another word, and in that moment, my world tilted on its axis. Kyle walked in. My son, my only child. The boy I had raised from the ground up. The one whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose science fair projects I'd stayed up all night helping with. I saw a flash of memories, teaching him to ride a bike, cheering from the sidelines at his baseball tryouts, comforting him through his first bad breakup. This was the boy who was supposed to be my legacy. But the man standing in front of me now was a stranger. He wore a polished, practiced smile, and his eyes held a look I couldn't quite recognize, something cool and distant. "Dad," he said, his voice dripping with a warmth that felt utterly fake. "You're looking better." I just stared back at him, my face a stone mask. I didn't return the smile. I let the silence stretch between us, letting him feel the weight of my gaze. When I finally spoke, my words were like chips of ice. "Why am I here, Kyle?" He let out a long, theatrical sigh, as if I were a child being unreasonable, as if my confusion was an inconvenience to him. "Dad, please," he said, his tone patronizing. "You weren't safe on your own anymore. We've been over this." He gestured around the sterile room as if it were a luxury suite he'd graciously provided. "I was fine," I said, my voice low and firm. "You know I was fine. I slipped on some wet leaves. It happens." I leaned forward, pinning him with my stare. "So tell me the real reason. Tell me why you sold my house." For just a fraction of a second, his carefully constructed expression flickered. A flash of something, was it guilt, annoyance, crossed his face before the mask was back in place. But I saw it. I knew I'd hit a nerve. "You needed the money for long-term care," he said, the lie rolling off his tongue with practiced ease. My jaw tightened, and I could feel a hot anger rising in my chest. "Don't lie to me, Kyle," I bit out. Not to my face. "Dad, I'm helping you," he insisted, taking a step closer, trying to use his presence to intimidate me. "This facility is good. It's one of the best. You're getting older. You have to accept that. You can't keep pretending nothing's wrong with you." The accusation stung, the implication that I was delusional, that I was the one who couldn't face reality. "I'm not pretending anything," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "In fact, I'm doing the opposite. I asked for an independent evaluation." The words hung in the air between us. His face changed completely. The practiced smile vanished, replaced by a storm of panic and irritation. His eyes, which had been so cool and controlled, now looked sharp and cornered. He stammered, his voice losing its smooth veneer. "Why would you do that? There's no need for that." He started pacing back and forth in the small space between my bed and the window, his movements jerky and agitated, like a caged animal. "Because I don't belong here," I said, each word deliberate and clear, "and I'm going to prove it." Kyle stopped pacing and ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. He was losing control, and he knew it. "You're just making this so difficult," he complained, his voice rising. "What happens if the evaluation says you're fine? You'll just go home and fall again, and then what?" "I'm trying to protect you, Dad, can't you see that?" His words were meant to sound like concern, but they rang hollow. "No," I said quietly, the truth settling in my mind with a cold, hard finality. "You're not trying to protect me. You're trying to protect something else." He froze mid-step, his back to me. The silence in the room was electric. I let him stew in it for a moment before I continued. "The house," I said, my voice steady. "The money from the sale. Whatever grand plan you've built on the back of my forged signature." I watched his shoulders tense up. He swallowed hard, a small, visible movement in his throat, and for the very first time since this whole nightmare began, he didn't deny it. He didn't try to spin another lie or throw another accusation at me. Instead, he turned away from me, looking out the window at the manicured lawn below. His voice, when he finally spoke, was thin and reedy, filled with a self-pity that made my stomach turn. "Dad, you have no idea how expensive life has been," he whined. "You just don't understand my responsibilities. You don't understand what I'm dealing with every single day." I felt a surge of disgust. He was trying to justify his betrayal, to paint himself as the victim. "My home wasn't yours to take," I said, my voice shaking with a quiet rage. "None of that was my life. Kyle, my home." He stepped closer then, his posture changing. The whining victim was gone, replaced by someone cold and menacing. His voice dropped to a low, threatening whisper. "Let's just keep things simple. Dad, stay here. Cooperate. Don't make this any harder than it needs to be." A chill went down my spine. It wasn't a request, it was an order. That wasn't concern in his voice. That wasn't love. That was pure, unadulterated control. And in that chilling moment, I realized the man speaking to me. He wasn't the boy I raised. That boy was gone, replaced by this cold, calculating stranger. As if on cue, a sharp knock echoed from the door. The tension in the room snapped. Kyle jumped, stepping back instinctively as the same nurse from before peeked her head in. She had a bright, professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mr. Jennings," she said cheerfully, "the independent evaluator is here. He's a little early, but he's ready for you whenever you are." Kyle's face went completely pale. He looked as if he'd seen a ghost. His composure shattered, and raw panic took its place. "What evaluator?" He snapped at the nurse, his voice cracking. The nurse, unfazed by his tone, simply smiled politely. "The one your father requested yesterday, sir." She looked from him to me, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. It was time. I pushed myself up from the bed, feeling a strength I hadn't felt in weeks. I stood slowly, deliberately, letting my full height settle. I was old, but I was not broken. I locked my eyes onto my son's, a gaze I had used 1,000 times to break down suspects, a gaze that tolerated no lies. "Kyle," I said, my voice ringing with an authority he hadn't heard in years. "This ends today, one way or another." He opened his mouth, a desperate, sputtering sound coming out, but no words followed. He just stared at me, his eyes wide with fear and disbelief. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't the one who looked powerless. The tables had finally turned. Dr. Grant, the evaluator, had a calm, steady presence. Her eyes were sharp, observant, and missed nothing. She shook my hand firmly, then her gaze shifted to Kyle. "Mr. Jennings," she said, her voice polite but firm, "I'll need to speak with your father alone." Kyle stiffened. I could see the tension ripple through his shoulders. "Why? I should be here to support." "It's standard procedure," she interrupted, leaving no room for argument. "Capacity evaluations must be private." He hesitated, his jaw tight. A forced, tight smile stretched across his lips as he muttered, "I'll wait outside." But he didn't just wait outside. He paced. I could hear the restless rhythm of his footsteps through the heavy door, fast, impatient, irritated. The sound of a man terrified of losing control. Dr. Grant sat across from me, the polished table a wide expanse between us. She opened her folder. "Mr. Jennings, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Please answer at your own pace." "Of course," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She started with the simple things, the building blocks of a sound mind, the date, my address, my birthday, the names of my neighbors, the last book I'd read, the medication I take twice a day, even the name of the street where my late wife and I bought our first home, so many years ago. I answered every single question without a moment's hesitation. The memories were clear as glass, untouched by the confusion Kyle had claimed was clouding my mind. A small, almost imperceptible twitch at the corner of her lips told me she was pleased. The beginning of a smile. "Good," she said, her tone professional but encouraging. "I'd like to move on to the reasoning portion now. Why do you believe you were placed here?" This was it. The moment I had been rehearsing in my head, I took a steadying breath. "Because my son submitted incorrect information," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "He claimed I was confused, but I wasn't. He also sold my house without my consent, and I fear he may be trying to gain legal control over more than just my property." She took notes, her pen scratching against the paper. Her expression was unreadable. "And why would he do that?" I exhaled slowly, the weight of the words heavy in my chest. "I don't know his exact reasons, but I know he's overwhelmed financially. He's been struggling with debt for a while. I found out he attempted to obtain a power of attorney on my behalf." Her eyebrows lifted, a flicker of surprise in her otherwise neutral expression. "Did you authorize him to handle your finances?" "No," I said, the word coming out sharp and firm. "Never." She set her pen down on the folder, the small click echoing in the quiet room. She looked at me, really looked at me, for a long moment. "Mr. Jennings, nothing you've said or shown me today indicates any cognitive impairment. Your thought process is clear. Your memory is excellent. Your reasoning is completely intact. A wave of relief washed over me, so powerful it almost buckled my knees. It was like breaking the surface after being held underwater for too long. But the feeling was fleeting, gone in a heartbeat. Because then, she added quietly, her voice dropping, but the system moves slowly. Even if I file my report today, your son will be informed. And that meant Kyle would react. He would know his plan was failing, and his reaction wouldn't be regret. It wouldn't be an apology. It would be the desperate, cornered fear of a man losing control. As if on cue, the door burst open. Kyle stood there, his face a mask of anxious fury. "What's going on?" he demanded, his voice loud in the small room. "Why is this taking so long?" Dr. Grant stood calmly, unfazed by his outburst. "Mr. Jennings, the evaluation is complete. I will submit my findings." Kyle's eyes flicked between me and the doctor, trying to read the situation. "What did you tell her, Dad?" he asked, a demanding edge to his voice. I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. For the first time in weeks, the truth wasn't in my hands, a fragile thing I had to protect. It was in someone else's, someone who couldn't be manipulated, couldn't be bullied or misled. He took a step forward, his voice suddenly shaking, laced with a false, wounded tone. "Dad, why are you doing this? You're supposed to trust me." I looked at my son, at the man he had become. "I did," I said softly, "and look where I woke up." His jaw tightened. He looked like a man watching his carefully constructed world start to tilt on its axis, threatening to crash down around him. Dr. Grant gathered her papers, her movements efficient and final. "I will submit the report by noon. Mr. Jennings will be reevaluated for placement." Kyle swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "This isn't over," he seethed, the words a low threat. "No," I said quietly, a strange sense of calm settling over me. "It isn't." For the first time in a long time, I knew he was right. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of the fight to get my life back. And now, I wasn't fighting alone. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more content. The hours after Dr. Grant left felt like waiting for a storm. I could smell it in the air, that charged stillness before the sky breaks. I sat in the quiet of my room, just watching the second hand on the clock. It was this slow, relentless creep, and I knew that once her report was filed, once it hit the system, everything would finally begin. The quiet was almost louder than any noise. Then, at exactly 1:42 p.m., a voice crackled over the intercom. "Mr. Harold Jennings, please come to the administrative office." My heart didn't just beat faster, it felt like it jumped into my throat. This was it, the moment of truth. My pulse was pounding in my ears as I walked down the hallway, each step feeling both heavy and incredibly light. When I reached the office, Ms. Harper, the social worker, looked up from her desk. Her expression was this strange mix, caught somewhere between relief for me and concern about what was coming next. "Mr. Jennings," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "Dr. Grant submitted her findings. She's recommended an immediate review of your placement. We've scheduled a discharge meeting for this afternoon." A discharge meeting. The words hung in the air, and for a second, my knees felt weak, like they might just give out from under me. All this time, I'd been fighting for this, and now that it was real, it was almost too much to process. I managed to nod slowly, and Kyle, I had to ask. Her expression faltered, just for a moment, a tiny crack in her professional composure. "He was informed," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "And, he's already on his way." Of course he was. He wouldn't let this go without a fight. 10 minutes later, the office door swung open, and Kyle stormed in. His face was a mask of tight, controlled frustration. He wasn't looking at me with concern. He was looking at me like I was a problem he needed to solve, a mess he had to clean up. "Dad," he said, his voice sharp, clipped, "can we talk? Alone?" Before I could even form a response, Ms. Harper cut in, her tone leaving no room for argument. "No," she said calmly, "all discussions regarding placement must happen here, in this office." Kyle shot her a glare that could have withered plants. Then his eyes snapped back to me. The anger was radiating off him. "Dad, this evaluation. It's all wrong. It's a complete misunderstanding. You told her things that make me look." He trailed off, searching for the right word, but I finished it for him. "I told her the truth," I said, my voice quiet but steady. The word hit him like a physical blow. He actually flinched. Truth, it was a word we hadn't shared honestly in a long time. For a long moment, he just stood there, speechless. I could see his jaw working, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. And in his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Fear, but it wasn't fear for me. It was fear for himself, fear for what he was about to lose. The control, the money, the life he'd built on my foundation. Finally, he spoke, his voice cracking, losing its sharp edge and becoming something else. Something pleading. "Dad, I wasn't trying to hurt you," he said, the words trembling. I needed help. I was drowning. I thought if you were here, just for a little while, I could catch up financially and then I'd bring you back home." The excuse was so thin, So pathetic. You sold my house, I said, the words flat and heavy. You sold my home, Kyle. You took everything without even asking. His shoulders slumped in defeat. The fight seemed to drain right out of him. I thought it would be temporary, he mumbled, his eyes on the floor. Temporary. That word made my stomach twist into a knot. His temporary fix was my permanent prison. Ms. Harper folded her hands on her desk, her gaze fixed on Kyle. Kyle, she said, her voice leaving no doubt about her authority. Based on the independent evaluation, in your father's clear mental state, he will be discharged today. Effective immediately, and a report will be submitted to the appropriate authorities regarding the inconsistencies in his admission. Kyle's eyes widened in panic. A report, he stammered. Yes, she confirmed. This facility has legal and ethical obligations to document and report questionable admissions. What happened here was not right, and it will be investigated. Kyle's head whipped around to face me, his eyes wide with a desperate plea. He was looking at me as if I could stop this, as if I could wave a magic wand and make the consequences of his actions disappear, as if I should save him, again, but I had nothing left to give him. All I said was, I'll be leaving today, Kyle. He swallowed hard, a visible sign of his panic. Dad, please. I pushed myself up from the chair, slowly, feeling the strength return to my legs. I tried to raise you to be an honest man, Kyle. I tried to teach you right from wrong. Somewhere along the way, you lost that path. I truly hope you find it again someday, but you can't take my life to fix yours. A single tear slipped down his cheek. It was quiet, almost ashamed. But I knew, deep in my gut, that remorse isn't the same as repair. Saying you're sorry doesn't undo the damage. I turned and walked past him, heading for the door without another word. The conversation was over. That chapter of my life was over. Tom was waiting for me outside in the parking lot, leaning against his old reliable truck. When he saw me walking toward him, free and steady on my own 2 feet, a huge grin spread across his face. About time, he said, his voice warm with relief. He opened the passenger door for me. Let's get you home, Harold. Home. The word sounded foreign. I hadn't had a home in what felt like a lifetime. Home? I asked softly. He just nodded toward the passenger seat. Eli found a temporary place for you until we can sort out the situation with your house. It's all taken care of. You're not alone in this, Harold. We've got you. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt my lungs expand fully, like I could finally take a deep, clean breath. It was a wave of pure relief, freedom, clarity. As we drove away from that nursing home, I watched the building shrink in the side mirror, and I didn't feel bitterness or anger. I felt something closer to pride. I had survived something I never saw coming, an ambush from my own family, and I had won. I wasn't confused. I wasn't declining. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I was finally taking my life back. And this was just the beginning. Thank you for following my story this far. It means the world to me. If you're just joining, be sure to catch up on the earlier parts. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what happens next.